Welcome to Blue Talks.
Being here at Columbia University has been an incredible experience. And I want to thank everyone for becoming part of my life right now and part of my, in some ways, my past. And, because every moment we march forward into our future. Winston Churchill said, if we look further into our past, we can better predict our future. Mark Twain said, the past doesn't always repeat itself, but it sometimes rhymes. Something else that we've heard time and time again is hindsight is 20/20, exactly. So what I'm gonna do is take some of those concepts and just shift it a little bit, because I know my past. Not that I want to live in it, but there's some clues back there, and you know your past. You know what's happened back there. And I'm going to go through some examples of my life, and hopefully you can see some parallels, not exactly in terms of the content, but the context of what has happened in your life. And it's actually interesting, the synchronicities that have happened around this event that have impacted all of us, I believe, in a positive way. So I was born and raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school. I went to Catholic high school. My mother was more than a practicing Catholic. And as in my younger days, thinking, oh, we're going to church again. And my sister just mentioned it in regards to Easter. She didn't like Easter because we ended up in church for 4 days in a row. And on Good Friday, that sermon, that went on and on and on and on. And yes, there's suffering involved, but we really felt we were suffering on that day. And maybe that was to get a point across. But the lesson I got from my mother wasn't so much on the dogma aspect. She was praying all the time. And I would see her in her bedroom at different times, and she would be praying and praying and praying. And we prayed a lot as a family. The lesson I got out of that was there's some sacred space around prayer. And at a young age, I had learned to go within. Okay, interesting. We march forward in time. I get to high school. I go to an all-boys Catholic high school. And I had some great coaches. I think we had some people talk about athletics a little earlier on, and people that have helped them in their past. And my coaches did a great job, not so much what we did on the field or on the ice rink, but more so they taught us how to visualize, once again, going in. They brought authors like Napoleon Hill to our attention. They brought Dale Carnegie to our attention. They brought the idea, again, as I mentioned, of visualization, going within. And so that became an intricate part of my life. Moved out of high school, went to university for 2 whole weeks. I went there for the party week, and then after that, I went for the academic week, and I said, this isn't for me. Go west, young man. So I moved out to Calgary, and I was going to take my chance and see what it's like to work on the oil patch. And let me tell you, that was not for me. In about a few months, I turned around and I came back. And so I'm 20 years old. Now what do? I get into the photocopy business. And that is a sink or swim business. You either you do it or you don't. I was able to be in that business for about 5 years. And I was able to do well enough to buy some property and have a certain level of, let's call it, business success. And yet, being introspective from the prayer side, seeing what was happening from high school, another fortuitous event came into my life, and that was meditation. So I was in my late 20s, and I learned a form of meditation that I've been practicing ever since, twice a day. So it's been over 30 years that this aspect of my life has been within me. And when I look back at my path, I see, wow, what my mother taught me about that sacred space was really important. What I learned in high school in terms of going within and relying on the self paid dividends. Now, when I had learned this form of meditation, I could see that this path that was behind me had markers on it, or that it started to glow as I was moving into my future. But something else had happened when I started to look at my past. I saw this zigzag pattern that I was going on. It's not a straight line, as we all know. We think it is, but to get to our goal or just to get through life, we're not going to get there on the highway. We're not going to zip. Our flight plan isn't a direct route. We've got, back and forths along the way. So I started thinking about this zigging and this zagging. And I also noticed that when I was in the zag, that was really, really tough. It was cold. It was slow. It was dark. At those times I would get physically sick. I was sinking. It felt like I was walking through wet cement. And then the other times when I was in the zig, holy smokes, it was perfect. It was like a clear route. Boom, 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 boom. Support of nature was coming in. Everything that I was, decided that, I should do this, great. I think there was a time in high school, I think in a 16-month period, I'd won 4 championships, went undefeated in football. Like, life is easy. This is a great way to have your high school years go through. Not so much the case, because when I came back from Calgary, a lot of zags occurred, because thinking that success earlier on is going to translate into business when you're a young person, that's not necessarily going to happen. So I had a tremendous amount of lessons to learn. And so then there was a lot of zagging going on through my 20s. When I got to transcendental meditation and I introduced that into my life and I continued to practice it, it didn't make everything easier, but it softened the blow. So if you're going to get into a fight with Mike Tyson, which I hope none of us ever have to, you're going to want protection. You're going to want headgear. You're going to want, as much around you. That's what I have found going within has helped me with, is making the blows a little softer, a little easier, because we're all going to take those blows in our life. We're all going to go through circumstances where, how did I get here? How did this happen? And interestingly enough, the other aspect that I noticed is there are different themes. So there was this metaphysical theme that had lined up for me, because then, I did some Tony Robbins work in terms of the fire walk, in terms of his books. I did some Marma therapy work. I did some Reiki Tumo, which is really totally different from the hardcore business that I was in. At the same time, I went back to university. The town that I'm from is a high-tech town, and you needed that piece of paper in terms of education. Now, I think the University of Hard Knocks gives you a much better education, but that piece of paper, at that time, the grand public really wanted to see that. That allowed me to get into the medical business. So I've been in the medical business. I was in the medical business for about 30 years. And that was rather interesting too, because it's like learning a whole new language on the dental side. It's very, very intriguing what they do. People think that getting into sales is easy. Getting in is easy. Staying is hard. Staying in any type of business that's the hard part. From the outside, that's a breeze. That's no problem. And yet getting in there, that was another theme in terms of business. I had started back at square one again. I had to start learning. So over the next 15 years, I had learned my craft in that industry. I was doing some management as well along the way. So I had a little bit of the management side. I had a little bit of the sales side. I had the internal work side, which really, really helped me out over time. I started with a company as director of sales. Wow, what a great headache. We think, oh, wow, look at me now. Oh, great, okay. But what's coming is something else. So when you're cutting your teeth in these various businesses or these various ideas, it really is part of that zag. Then you think in your mind, oh, this is going to be great for me. It's an awesome zig. But it was so much work and worth every moment. As we know, when we look back and see the work that we've done, we don't regret the work that we've done. We might regret the work we haven't done. Not necessarily the hard work, but the smart work. So again, those two themes for me, we've got the metaphysical theme and we've got the business theme, and they seem to be running on certain tracks. Now, those themes can be varied for all of us. It could be family, it could be love relationships, it could be travel, but that's up to you. That's your individual choice. Interestingly enough, with the travel, as we've heard, it really does open up your horizons. And coming here to Columbia, coming here to New York has just been an incredible experience, not only for me, I'm sure for you as well. So 23 was a very, very interesting year for me. And it started out where now the company that I'd worked for, I had grown the sales force from 5 people to 30 people, 32 people actually across Canada. So we were traditionally just in a small center out of Toronto. Now we had a national presence. At the beginning of 23, we had new ownership. And that was exciting because they had all these ideas. They had different things that they were going to do. We were going to go even broader nationally. We're going to have an office out in Calgary. We continue to have our office in Toronto. We had a branch office in Montreal. We did these dental shows, Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, and it was a going concern. So at 23, yes, there was this excitement building. And then if you live in Canada long enough, you start to freeze. The internal parts of your body just get so cold that you need to get south. And so I headed down to Mexico, and I love it down there. It's an awesome place. And if you ever go down on a vacation, you're looking at having fun. As soon as you get there, okay, you'll have a sip of this, you'll have a sip of that, and you find yourself, feeling relaxed. Unfortunately, that first night, it was easy to get liquids into me, but I had lost the ability to release any liquids from my body. And there were signs, but I ignored them. I ignored them because the one part of my brain was in that professional side, do whatever is required to move forward without having the balance of, the physical, the metaphysical. So that was out of whack. So another zag was about to begin. I had to go and seek medical attention down there. They had to insert an apparatus in me so that I was able to release fluids. Finally tried to get back to Canada. There was a delay in regards to that, but made it back. Had 2 dental shows within 5 weeks. We had finished the Vancouver one, had to do the Toronto one, and then we had to do the Montreal one. Like a trooper, I went through. I needed to get an appointment with a specialist. The specialist said, we're going to have the appointment on Monday. He gave me a certain date a little later on. It's the Monday of the Quebec Dental Show. Like, how is this possible? I thought with all the work I'd done on the metaphysical side, I'm master manifester. But no, that didn't happen. I started losing my patience. I said, this can't happen. But then I was reminded, okay, when I'm in that zag, that's when I need patience, and that's when I have to let time be my ally instead of being against me. Because life is really happening for us. It's not happening against us. Had my appointment on the phone with the specialist, so it wasn't a person-to-person, and he recommended to me surgery is the only option. So I had spoken to naturopaths, I've spoken to other healers. They were actually unable to help me. So I said, okay, let's go with the surgery. He says, we'll have you in 4 to 6 weeks. Awesome. Get back to Toronto, get back to work, no phone call from the doctor. I get called into the president's office. It's a Zoom meeting. He's from the US. We're now part of this large conglomerate that have 7 different companies. And they say to me, we don't need you anymore. Pardon? we don't need you anymore. We're going to move away from having you employed by our company. I put 15 years of my time with this company, built up a sales team that really they became very, very close with me, becomes part of your heart and soul. What am I going to do now? So, as I mentioned, when you're in the ZAG, time and patience, they're your ally, but it's kind of hard sometimes because I was going for, I was going to clinics trying to solve my issue. Things weren't helping. It's almost as though at this time, it felt like I was in a dark room and there was just nowhere to go. It was just, and the walls were coming in. So, interestingly enough, I had an interesting, great conversation with Corey. He went in depth in terms of what he did with Blue Talks. And what really sold me was his authenticity to get involved with the group. After I spoke to him, and I love that I had this fate, this piece of luck, the doctor called and scheduled the appointment. Great. So now I can handle my appointment. I can, then get involved with Blue Talks. Awesome. And I'm sure all of us have had these issues or these challenges in our lives where suddenly things line up, but you don't always see them. And I wasn't really seeing this at this time. I was out of balance, but I just couldn't see in front of me because that darkness, being in the ZAG, kept me back. Had my surgery. The doctor came in and spoke to me. He said, this is 20, 30 minutes tops. It's routine. We're going to be fine. I said, okay, great. So they gave me one of those trolleys that, that you have to, I had an IV on it. So I had something coming into me and then there was a tube going out of me and that was on the trolley. And so it was time for my surgery. And I've never had a surgery before. So I'm wearing one of these gowns that the backside is showing. And they gave you these little boots, these little paper boots and the hat. And okay, I'm walking. So I start walking with this trolley and it's got one of those wheels that's just floating. Like when you go to Costco or if you go to the grocery store, you always get that cart that does this type of thing. So I'm walking and boom! I stubbed my toe just before the surgery. Who thought there was going to be a cleanup on aisle 5? That didn't happen. So I get into the surgery. I'm in there for about an hour and a half. And then the doctor speaks to me the next day and he says, yeah, I was in there for a while. I said it was 90-10. It's more like 50-50. So I went to the clinic a few days later and the surgery didn't work. Great. About a week or so later, it was the first Blue Talks weekend. And the way the Blue Talks work is, Heidi was running the event, and we had these breakout rooms. So after we receive some education, we go into a breakout room. And the first person that speaks to me after I went through my story says, "We snub our toe before the university breaks our leg." I said, "What? We stub our toe?" Okay, so we all have these coincidences, but how could that coincidence show up? So there are a lot of other, great words. The next word was you were released and you were blessed. So guidance was coming in through the Zoom meeting, which was absolutely incredible. What I found is that when I look back and I start to see these coincidences and people try to attach meanings to them, the meaning I attach to these coincidences, we're on the right path. They're guideposts. They're showing you, yes, you're here. This is where you're supposed to be. This event, I'm sure we all have a different story in terms of how we got here today. And for me, there have been a number of coincidences, one that just happened a moment ago. So a few days ago, I go to get some US dollars. And I come out of the bank and I look at my slip and the last digits are 2112. Okay, so there's a mirrored image of the numbers. Okay. New York area code 212. Okay. I come down here, and again, sometimes when you're looking for those coincidences, they don't always show up. So I get on the subway this morning, and I look up, and someone gets on the subway, and on the jacket, it says Maharishi. And he brought the form of meditation that I use to North America years and years ago. I've been walking the city and finding these pennies. And Corey's in the back and he talks about the number 3. I pull out the 3 pennies. Again, just a guidepost. I'm supposed to be here. This is the right path. And it has been simply fantastic. My wish to all of you is that, you look at your history, not to live there, but to learn from it. And that your zags be as short as possible, learn your lessons, but for your zigs, have fun in all of them. Enjoy every single aspect, because we never know when we're going to get pennies from heaven.